Thank you, Marty. Welcome, everybody. Hi, I'm Avi Meyers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine. Check us out on the web at www.ntnm.org. We're way over 30,000 people. Could be 40 by now. Could be 150,000 if we pulled some stunts. Not that many. But have watched us on the web. ntnm.org is your gateway to YouTube. Go to all your CAPS meetings. That's caps24.org. Of course, caps24.org is put together by Sonny Hersh. Sonny Hersh, besides for being the chairman of the District Advisory Committee of the 24th District, and Mr. Capps himself, also is my entire technical crew, and basically he's the one that put up the website. He's the one that built this terrific set over here behind me. He's the one that put together the cameras. And his spare time as Dr. Frankenstein, he even created me in a laboratory out of a test tube. Sonny is also presently undergoing training by the FBI for real. He got selected, and he's working very, very hard in his quest to be on the FBI's top 10 list. And good luck with your quest, Sonny. At this point, it is a pleasure to have our jack-of-all-trades expert, a whiz in so many different subjects it's not even funny, but actually, once in a while he needs to make a dollar, so he does that as the leading election lawyer in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, and probably most of the Western Hemisphere, if not most of the foreseeable universe. I don't know. But anyway, it is a pleasure to have James P. Nally, LLC, as my guest. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Avi.
First of all, my pleasure. And is this a lull time now, election-wise? I mean, you don't have... Are you in any fights right now?
Yeah, I just finished one matter up with the State Board of Elections, but it is kind of a quiet time, yes. Things won't be getting going again really till around Labor Day, around that period of time where people will be out then actively campaigning. And
doing things like healing wards and opening rifts and all the rest of it.
All the stuff that goes along with that, yes.
Yeah, so Jim's had many of the leading candidates. Well, let me ask you, one of the people you've championed in the past, or I shouldn't say champion, I mean who's been your client, is Paul Vallis.
Yes.
Is there a shot that he, and by the way, I'm making this up as I go, is there a chance he could run for governor next time?
Well, there's a chance. It was interesting. I attended a luncheon about a month ago at the City Club, and Paul was the speaker, and he got a very good reception there. He talked a great deal about education. He's down in New Orleans now, working down there, although he has moved back to Illinois, and he's living here in Illinois now. His wife and children are here, and his kids are in school here, and he commutes down to New Orleans. And it was very interesting to listen to him because he was really excited about the ability to start from the ground up, literally, with the school system. I mean, with all the tragedy.
That's right, the hurricane.
Yeah, I mean, the tragedy that accompanied Katrina, that entire school district was wiped out. And Paul was asked to come down there by I believe the governor and senator as well as the mayor and say, look, we know what you've done in Chicago, you've been in Philadelphia, you've done some wonderful things there. We obviously need a lot of help down here, and would you come down and do that? And he has. And it was just very fun to listen to him and the enthusiasm that he had about being able to come down and literally reinvent the wheel.
Cool.
And he's been very busy down there. He's taken it on as a challenge, and instituting a lot of the programs that he's done in other places. And like anything else, you learn as you go along, and you see what works and what doesn't work. So he's very busy, and who knows? I mean, that's a couple of years from now, and between now and then, who knows what may occur? But
indictments, impeachments, who knows?
Who knows? I mean, stranger things have happened. So I think he's somebody, but just looking at the reception he got, it was a sold-out luncheon, and everybody was there, was very attentive, and really was interested in what he had to say. So, he's a person, obviously, that anytime any major public office is talked about in terms of people who are out there who have talents who might be interested, his name seems to pop up. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, that would be very interesting, and that's something I'd like. And being his lawyer, I figured maybe you could help us on that subject. There's so much stuff we could talk about. One of the things, you know what? I'll take advantage of a little bit of free legal time here. We've talked about the subject before anyway. First of all, I want to thank all the really nasty, mean people that have been trying to do so much to get me off the air, to get me off the station, to say really mean things on me. You're really increasing the viewership I thank you. You're increasing the hits on the website. You're increasing the amount of shows watched. The people that refuse to come on the show now, because I actually fight back when actually the blogs, I don't mention any of them on the air or their names or whatever, but the meanness that the web is spewed in community organizations. We have a situation right now where people like the West Rogers Park Community Organization, non-incorporated, very political group, and I like to refer to what they do as creative fascism, because they, just as an example, they actually voted in favor of a senior center at their meeting, right in front of Warren Park, a recreational senior citizen center. That, matter of fact, the day I filmed, I happened to run into Alderman Burnett at the cable place. First time I ever met him. And he's seen the show. He watches Cable Access. He's got a show on Cable Access.
Right, he has his own program.
And he couldn't understand how anybody can be against a senior citizens recreation center in a park. He just didn't understand it. I have trouble understanding it, too. I mean, I understand that these are very rough people that might start their own street gangs and terrorize people on their motorcycles. I mean, we're talking about, senior citizens, please. But
well, I want to jump in here because
sure.
I feel it's very important for me to say this, not just because you and I are friends and you and I have been on this program a number of times together, but one thing that has always impressed me about you, Avi, you have always been open to everybody's point of view. And there are certain programs where they only invite people who agree with their point of view or who champion causes that they also champion, or who want to just come in and reiterate whatever the host has to say. And one thing I've always admired about you is that you have invited just a complete diverse group of people, given them the opportunity. Not all of them have taken the invitation to come on and talk about their issues, but I've never seen you in any situation, whatever your personal views may be, fail to invite somebody who may think 180 degrees differently than you and say, well, come on the show and talk about what you have to say. That's what, particularly at Cable Access, it's about the free exchange of ideas. That's what the whole idea of Cable Access is that regular people who live in a community can come on television and talk about issues that are important to them, and people can say you're 100% right, or they can say you don't know what you're talking about. But for whatever the point of view is, it gets their point of view out, and then in the marketplace of ideas, people decide what ideas they think are good or what ideas they think are bad. And for anybody to criticize you in particular in any way about the way you promote your show, the way you conduct your show, is simply wrong. Because I have seen people on this program over the years who are absolutely opposed to things that you are in favor of, or on the other side of the coin, things you favored where they've come in and they do not agree with you. And you've never been somebody to self-select or prune out the people who appear on the show. You've always invited people of opposing viewpoints on here. You've always given them the opportunity to say what they have to say. Now, there may be constructive criticism, or you may ask pointed questions about what they have to say. But again, if they have a good point, they'll be able to defend it. And what has been happening recently, where I understand there have been some people agitating and trying to say that you shouldn't be on television or you shouldn't have a point of view. Well, that's wrong. And that's not what cable TV is about, and that's not what this country's about, basically. This country's about people being able to speak their minds. And if you don't agree with them, fine. But you know what? The fact that you don't agree with them is not a veto power to say that you don't have a right to your opinion, or I don't have a right to mine, or they don't have a right to theirs. And when people are starting to agitate in a way because they don't agree with you, to say, well, because I don't agree with Avi, Avi shouldn't be on television, or Avi shouldn't be allowed to speak. That is wrong. And if you people believe that, come on the show and state that on the record, because you know what? You'll be torn to ribbons, because nobody who is thinking the right way about what this is all about is going to say that Avi or anybody else doesn't have a right to their point of view. And you have a right to your point of view, too. Come on board. I know Avi. He'll invite you here to sit next to him and dialogue and exchange ideas, and let the viewers decide who they agree with.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, and that's exactly right. And by the way, at this point, I want to re-extend my invitations to the West Rogers Park West Rogers Park Community Organization. I'll say the name right for once. To Zach Schiffman, and Sharda Thapa. You Divine, as a matter of fact, was here a week ago Friday, giving me a list of 4 things that, and probably there were more things if he paid more attention, that he wants actually removed from YouTube. He wants me to go back and re-edit the shows and take out what was on the air, take out what was said, put them back on YouTube. Not to mention the Northside Alliance, which is actually an Albany Park organization, where Emily Burns is not returning my phone calls, and the leaders of that organization, and by the way, the person who was the chairman of the meeting is Nazy Dollar's campaign manager, And they have been invited also, and they have a standing invitation to come on, so please come on. And
there's a prime example because, in the last aldermanic election, I know you were a supporter of Alderman Stone.
Right.
You made that clear. You didn't pull any punches about it, but I know you invited each and every one of his opponents to come here and have the same opportunity to appear on your program and talk about their issues and their points of view on things. And some of them chose to do it and some of them chose not to. But the point is that you've always been absolutely fair and unbiased in terms of recognizing other people's points of view, whether you agree with them or not, and saying, come on television. I will use this forum that I've been given, meaning your show, and you can talk about the issues that are important to you. And then for somebody to criticize you, I think, is the height of arrogance, because if you don't believe enough in your ideas or your point of view to come on a program like this and put them on the table, but instead, engage in some kind of whispering campaign or try to censor somebody because you don't agree with them, you've got some real problems, and that's not what this country is all about. And the sooner you learn that, the better. And come in here if your ideas are good, and let them be tested in the face of public opinion.
I couldn't have said that better, and as a matter of fact, I couldn't have said that better at all. So thank you very much. I do thank you for that.
And again, I say this because we're friends, but one of the reasons you are my friend is because I've always admired that quality about you, that you are tolerant of other people's opinions, whether or not you agree with them. And I think we need more of that, not less. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, as a matter of fact. Well, thank you. And, when somebody actually went to the Chamber of Commerce and asked them to not appear on the show and went to a public meeting, boycott the show, don't watch it, all the rest of it. By the way, and I want to thank that guy because he always gives the link to the show on these message boards, I'm told. And along with the phrase something like, well, I watch this so you won't have to. Anyway, it's interesting. I mean, the meanness among people is unbelievable. And I think the web has contributed to that, in large part to that. There's somebody I really don't want to mention, but there's some of the people with the message boards. I mean, you give somebody Photoshop, and they can do some interesting things and things that are kind of fun. I showed you that one of them. The person's got some interesting stuff. It's just a shame that's not true.
Well, that's the problem with the web, and as we get into this area now where the traditional media is hurting. I mean, look at the newspapers; they're shrinking and they're laying people off, and the coverage that they used to have just isn't there anymore. And people are going more and more to the web. And the problem is that, at least with the newspapers, in most cases, there's an element of objectivity there. The editorial pages are one thing, but in terms of reporting, there was a basic factual issues that came out in stories in the paper, on television, or the radio. Whereas on the web, again, it is a marketplace of ideas, and people can say what they want, but you have to take that with a big grain of salt, because just because somebody goes on the web and says something or publishes something there doesn't make it true. And
it's funny because I was looking at some of the stuff in the 49th Ward where there's a ton of these people, and there was somebody who really started ripping apart one of the people in particular that I'm not fond of. But then I started reading their stuff, and their stuff wasn't true either.
Well, sometimes I think there's people with way too much time on their hands.
I think so. I think it's not even I mean, the stuff that was, you know what, you're 100% right. So, hopefully the economy will improve and they'll be able to get a job, whether it's flipping burgers or pumping gas, and, hope you get a life, guys. You know what, let's change the subject dramatically, and let's talk about something really exciting to me. We could talk about Derrick Rose. I like that idea, but you know what? The Cubs. We could talk baseball a little bit. Yeah, this is a good year so far. This
is a tremendous year so far. I mean, it just it's so amazing to watch. And as a Cubs fan, I want to give my props to the Southsiders. As Avi and I sit here right now, both teams are in first place.
Yeah.
And it really is. Whatever else happens this summer on either side of town, I think it's going to be a great, great fun summer to watch baseball.
Yeah, I have to say, I am definitely a Cub fan, but I was very surprised. I thought the Tigers would absolutely destroy this year with their lineup, and they just farmed out Dontrell Willis to A-ball. To
A-ball, not even triple A-ball. I mean, this guy was Cy Young material last year.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you. And you know what? Again, I'll get off the Sox quickly because I want to concentrate on the Cubs. But give Kenny Williams his due. He made some trades, made some moves, or didn't make some moves this past offseason, and he took a raft of criticism. And you know what? Most of the stuff he's done now seems to be panning out.
Yeah, it really did. He's probably got the best pitching in his division right now.
Absolutely, he does. And that the relief pitching has gone from terrible to some of the best in the American League.
And they might even wind up picking up somebody like CC Sabathia mid-season, who's on a contract year. I mean, I thought if Detroit didn't make it, I figured Cleveland was a cinch.
Well, I don't want that to happen. I'd like us to pick him up. So
no, absolutely. Well, that'd be. I think.
I think we're still one solid starter short in our Cubs rotation. And, I'm figuring by the end of June, early July, when some teams figure they're out of it, that there'll be an opportunity to pick a real, frontline starter up.
Yeah, I was definitely surprised the wrong way about Rich Hill this year. I thought he was going to be quite a bit better and provide us that.
Well, we got a weakness. I mean, our lefties have, Rich Hill hasn't been there, and Marshall, through no fault of his own, they kind of converted into reliever. Now they're trying to get him back into a starter so that they could have a lefty, another lefty available to him. But
yeah. Our relief pitching has been absolutely amazing.
Oh, it's been outstanding. And even Wood, who's scary at times. I have Mitch Williams flashbacks sometimes watching him. But you know what? By and large, he's gotten the job done, although it hasn't always been a smooth ride.
No, that's true. But, I got to tell you, when I see him, he's got that. I've always liked him. And I always felt so bad about the injuries and all the rest of it. It's so nice to see him come out day after day now and be able to perform.
Well, it's nice too if he's there, and if for some reason he falters or he does get injured or whatever, you got Marmol, who's just a closer in waiting.
People are already talking about Marmol like he could be, in theory, the best reliever in baseball right now, and the combination of him and Wood, and not to mention people like Howry usually picks up the second half of the year.
Yeah, Howry is usually stronger after the All-Star break, so we can expect even better things from him. And then you look at obviously Fukudome was a huge acquisition.
Unbelievable.
And he's just superb. I mean, and if you notice with him, Avi, this guy's a master of waiting out the pitcher. This guy's, he's not swinging at a bad first ball. He's making the guy pitch to him. He's waiting for good pitches. And I think if you watch the other Cubs, guys like Ramirez, who maybe, or Soriano still does it a little bit, but, guys who would jump on pitches right away without really, gauging them. They seem to be more patient. All their hitters seem more patient. I think Fukudome's been a good influence in terms of that.
He very well could be. It's also interesting to hear the chants from the crowd and to see it seems to me like I could be wrong, but it seems to me there's an increased number of Japanese people in the city, and I wonder if he's got anything to do with it.
They've got 3 or 4 beat writers from Japan who are spending the whole season just following him around. I mean, this is huge news in Japan because the Cubs are known worldwide, and what I understand is the last team Fukudome played with in Japan was kind of equivalent of the Cubs, a team that had never really won the big one and had been 40 or 50 years, and he was on the team when they finally won the championship over there, and I think that's kind of the angle the Japanese press is taking, like, hey, can he do it again now? He can come to this team that hasn't won in the World Series in 100 years, and can he work that magic here? And he's just been what a great acquisition. And you know what? You got to give Hendry credit. He's picked a couple of guys off the scrap heap in Johnson, and so far Edmonds, who I had grave doubts about, he seems to be picking things up. But certainly Reed Johnson. I mean, here's a guy who got released by Toronto, and we picked him up. And this guy has made 4 or 5 just highlight reel catches.
Yeah, he's been a revelation. He really has.
And he's batting well, and he's a smart baseball player. And they had a hole in center field with PA just, for whatever reason, he's not hitting big league pitching.
Well, he's still only 23 or 24. He's
right.
Not that old.
Right, and he still may come around. But as far as being ready now, he wasn't ready, obviously.
No, he definitely wasn't ready. Edmonds, I'm still waiting on, but Reed Johnson's been terrific. Yeah. Absolutely terrific.
He's been a great acquisition. And, even with the pitching, I mean, you've got a guy like Gallagher who came up through the Cubs system and has been a pretty solid pitcher so far. Now, I'd still like to see one more guy that you really say, this is the guy that if it's, Game 7, we don't mind putting the ball in his hands. and I don't know if you want to put that much pressure on a guy like Gallagher. It's probably not fair to him. But, you certainly have, Zambrano is Zambrano.
Zambrano's magnificent.
He's a class, Lilly, when he's on, he's on. When he's not, he's not.
Yeah.
And the guy that worries me a little bit is Marquis, because Marquis, we were talking about earlier about Howry getting stronger in the second half.
Yeah,
Marquis' thing has been, he usually starts out strong and then fades, and up till now he hasn't been that strong. And
no, he hasn't been that strong.
So if this is as good as he's going to get and then fade, we may have some problems.
Could be a problem. I was kind of hoping John Leeper would have been effective, but he really hasn't been, neither in relief or. He hasn't been effective in general. Ryan Dempster's also been a very pleasant surprise.
Isn't that amazing? Now, here's a guy, as a closer, we'd all cringe and just say, what's going to happen when he gets in there? But you know what? he obviously put a lot of work in over the off season. He looks really good. His velocity is really fantastic.
Yeah, you know, you're 100% right. Last year, he's the kind of guy they make flat jackets for because he created it last year.
But you know
this year,
give him his credit. You know, when you start seeing things like this, and you know, I was at that game a couple of weeks ago where the Cubs were down 8-0, and you know, ended up winning 10-9, and you know, you start looking at games like that the Cubs normally, you know, if they're down 8-0, they'd run up the white flag and it'll be over. And, you know, they don't give up. Piniella takes most of the starters out, puts the second string guys in, and, you know, they win the game.
Yeah, let's switch topics. You know what? One thing I haven't talked about, and I almost don't on the show, and I try not to in general, but I was thinking some local angles for the presidential race. You know, it's so interesting to me, and I have to look at the whole thing, but Barack Obama, whether I like him or don't, one of the angles that I really see here is what could he do locally if he were to win? I mean, basically, his sponsorship from people like what's his name? One of the evil threesome, Emil Jones in the Senate. By the way, one of the questions I want to ask you, because you actually work with a lot of these guys, you know, for a living. But I had one of the more interesting guests I've had recently is Steve Rhodes from
the Beechwood.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy. And I asked him which he thought was more corrupt, the city, the state, or the county.
There's a question.
He was really dumbfounded. But by the way, I have been inviting Rich Miller. He didn't answer this time, but things are still hopping in Springfield. So hopefully we'll get him.
Yeah, I think they finally quieted down now, and I think all the legislators are praying that they're not spending another summer in Springfield, because they did that last year, and it was not a pleasant experience from anyone you talk to.
Yeah, it seems strategy-wise that they're going to deliberately wait till they have 30 days to present a bill, and you've got till, I guess, after July 1st, it's like things blow up real big the wrong way in terms of votes and stuff.
Well, you need a supermajority then to get anything passed. So that's why they passed everything out by the deadline this time.
Yeah.
Now, there's still huge issues if the governor is going to mandatorily veto things and what he's going to do with all these bills. But the basic financial bills have been passed. There are a lot of other bills that ended up in committee that didn't deal with budget or.
Here's one of the things I was reading about yesterday that really kind of surprised me on technicalities. One of the things that both Jones and Madigan seem to be doing, it's not an official bill until this thing is transcribed a certain way and then presented to the governor.
Yes.
And you've got 30 days to present things that way. And it would seem that they're going to deliberately wait till the day before, you know, like July 1st, June 29th or June 30th.
Well, there may be, you know, as far as like making it officially, you know, subject to the governor's review and signature. But, you know, on the other hand, the governor's staff has copies of everything that passed out.
Oh,
so
yeah.
When it's actually presented, you know, the executive branch still has plenty of time to evaluate it and decide what they want to do.
Oh, he knows what he's getting, and they're looking at it. There's no question about it. In terms of the quality of looking at it, that's a whole story for a grand jury one day, probably.
Well, you know, it's going to be very interesting to see, though, because I know you know, Republicans and Democrats, nobody wants to spend another summer in Springfield, and you know, it's going to be very interesting to see how does the governor take that into account? Is he more cooperative in terms of how he handles this, or you know, does it become some kind of a scorched earth thing between the legislative and executive branch? And we'll find out in a matter of weeks.
Actually, I was thinking why maybe Rich Miller didn't return my quest for invitation. Once in a while, I actually write. He's got a question. I'll actually write my response for, and unlike other people, I'll actually use my real name. I'm not afraid of doing stuff. And they were talking about should the legislature be made full-time year-round. And of course, for a guy like Rich Miller with Capital Effects, that'd be great for his business. I mean, people subscribe to the newsletter and the whole shot. And my feeling was I want to go back to the every other year sessions. Because I've always felt the less the General Assembly does, the better off we are.
I think there's probably wide support for not increasing the session.
No, I wouldn't think so. I was trying to understand all this stuff because some of it's really technical. But I guess if the Senate meets 3 more times, that pay raise they voted for would kick in or something?
Well, it's almost the way that the compensation committee works is there has to be an affirmative vote of both houses to reject it. And so long as there's not a vote taken to reject it, it takes effect.
Ooh, interesting. So, that's really sneaky. That way they're off the hook and giving themselves more money. despite a smashingly lousy performance the last 2 years.
Well, the problem is, too, though, the same process also sets the compensation for judicial officers, all the judges, as well as the legislators. So there's an element here that, you're mixing all the branches of government together, and, what the legislature does in terms of taking a vote on this thing it can affect the legislative pay raise, it can affect judicial pay raises, all of those things. So there's a lot more at work here than just, the legislators taking care of addressing their own pay raises or not.
Right, but they've also set it up in that manner in order to take less heat on them when they do raise themselves.
Well, it was absolutely set up in a way that the default position is the raises go into effect unless there's a vote to say no.
Yeah, these guys are very clever about making sure they have built-in excuses when they do the thing in the first place for saying, well, how could I possibly vote against this?
Right, and there has been some agitation. I know some of the local legislators have raised issues that they'd like to see that change. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. It certainly won't change for this time period, and any changes would be prospective to take effect in later years.
Yeah, well, every time there's a new reform bill, there's still another reform bill needed, and there's something that needs to be reformed about the new reform bill.
Well, that's why you have a legislature, because you do have to move with the times, and things that, sit there for a certain period of time. Any law can be amended, and any law can be changed, and any law can be, added or subtracted to. And unless there's constitutional issues, whatever the legislature says goes as long as the governor signs off on it.
One of my problems always has been with the state legislature to me is really, the whole state government to me has really shined out as bad as the problems we were having in the county or the different scandals that have occurred in the city. I think the state has really stood out, in my opinion, as being the absolute worst branch of government in this area. And I at one time, I used to use a phrase like, well, I'd use them I never used it for the state legislature, that they're the finest that money can buy. I don't mind so much that money buys them if they really were the finest.
Well, money is really the issue here, though, because, at all levels of government, the issue really is there are certain governmental functions that have to happen. We have to pave roads, we have to provide fire and police protection, and there has to be health care for people who can't afford it otherwise. But there's a limited amount of funds, and so the job of government is to allocate the money around all those needs, and that's always a problem. And one solution is obviously, raise more money, and then you'll have more money to allocate.
Yeah,
but
there's a limit to raising more money.
There's a limit to that. Sure,
we got our taxes clobbered last year. We have this gigantic sales tax now in Illinois. Other taxes, because the governor wouldn't raise the income tax. Other tax. Look at your telephone bill. Look what you're paying for phone calls. Look how much you're paying for taxes. I was reading my electric bill. My electric bill last time wasn't bad. It was $62. Okay, only $38 of it was actually for energy.
Yeah, well, government's always going to seek fund. The property taxes are something that eventually are going to have to be addressed, because every single cycle they go up and up and up, and there's a limit to what people can pay no matter what their property is.
And actually, what part of the problem is too that you've got the Speaker of the House definitely is a lawyer in favor of business, and it's coming down on people don't understand what kind of jumps we're getting in our property tax, because some of these cuts, and we're running out of time real fast. We're going to get big jumps the next 2 years. People don't realize that the laws they passed last year we were complaining about, we haven't seen the worst of yet.
Well, there are some plans out there that would trade an income tax increase for some reduction in the property tax. Now, whether any of that is going to fly, who knows?
And I'm all in favor of that, because too many regressive taxes are being paid. Are being passed, and it'd be nice to see something done based on somebody's ability more so, as opposed to a tax on a telephone, which everybody has to have, really, I think, hurts poor people more than there's other things like that. But you know what? There's not even time for Marty to say hi anymore. So hi, Marty. I'm sorry I didn't get you in there. Jim Nally, jack of all trades expert, Northtown Community Council's long debt. Jim, why don't you give them the phone number where you can be reached for any questions about all these interesting things we talked about?
My office number would be 312-422-5560.
312-422-5560. Thanks to my entire technical crew, Sonny Hersh. I hope we got your phone number into the suburbs. That's a maybe, because we get cut off at 29:30. Right now, we get cut off at 29:48. Oops, we're getting cut off. Thanks so much, Jim.